Hi, my name's Simon Barton. I'm a catering and hospitality lecturer at Doncaster College.
I'm Chris Wellington, I'm a catering and hospitality lecturer at Doncaster College.
We're just going to show you a little bit about making chocolates. We're going to go through the basic steps of making a ganache. If you don't know what a ganache is, it basically means that really nice chocolatey truffle centre that you get in a petit four or a chocolate. And we're just going to give you a few little tips, top tips and methods for lining these with tempered chocolate. We'll just discuss the key facts about tempered chocolate. And then hopefully show you the finished result all being well. Right, so now we're going to make a ganache filling. We're going to do roughly half fat cream to the chocolate. And here we've got a Belgian chocolate which is half dark, half milk to get a really nice flavour and colour. And we're just going to bring this cream to a boil. You can add things like butter and glucose which help to enrich it. It helps to preserve the shelf life of the product as well. We're actually using a UHT form of cream. The reason we're using that, some people turn their nose up, actually it extends the shelf life of the product because it's got a lower fat content. It means the product keeps longer, so if you've got a chocolate shop, it's a better product to use. And because it's high quality chocolate, you still get that really in-depth flavour without it being full fat cream. So I've just brought this to boil. See, that's just to boil. I don't want to reduce it or anything. And I'm just going to literally pour that over my chocolate, just so it covers it in the bowl. I'm just going to agitate the bowl slightly, and then I'm just going to leave that to sit with the hot cream on top for maybe 30 seconds. That's going to start to melt down the chocolate for us truffle filling, and then all I'm going to do is give that a quick whisk. If I was making a larger quantity of this for a lot of petit fours, I would use a stick blender or an immersion blender. That gives it a really smooth finish to your chocolate as well. So just for this purpose today, we're just going to use a whisk, and you could do this at home. The key is to use the best quality chocolate you can afford to use. I'm not going to say use the best chocolate there is, it's what you can afford to buy when you're making chocolate. So, and obviously depending on how much you're going to sell them for, depends on how good quality chocolate it should be. So what I'm doing now is just blending in the fat, which is the cream, into the chocolate, making sure it's nice and smooth. Get a really good whisk. I'm not beating it, I don't want to incorporate too much air into it. I just want to make sure it's nice and fully incorporated, nice and shiny and smooth. And as you can see, that already looks like you could just get a spoon and have a bit of that because it's really nice and smooth. It smells really nice and chocolatey. Obviously, the better quality chocolate you use, the better it's going to taste when it finishes. Now, if you wanted to add flavours to this, you would replace part quantity of your cream with a liquid puree like raspberry or mango or passion fruit. So you take a little bit of your cream out, replace the same quantity with your fruit puree, bring it to boil, exactly the same, pour it over the top. The only thing I would suggest is if you're going to add a fruit flavouring like that, you're better off using milk chocolate rather than half milk, half dark, because the flavour of the fruit comes through a lot better. So that's it, that's as ganache. It's as simple as that. You can do it with 2 ingredients, or you can, like I said, you can add butter and glucose and things like that, but in its simple form, that's all it is, cream and chocolate. Now I'm going to cool that down nice and quickly for the purposes of demonstration, and then once that's solidified slightly, it won't set too hard, we're going to pipe that into us lined moulds when we do our lining with our chocolate. Moulds have been polished nice and clean with some cotton wool or cotton buds. The reason you need to polish them is to get any excess fat that's in the moulds from the previous chocolates you've made. You never want to really scrub the moulds because you'll ruin them and scratch them. So if you're going to clean them, it'd just be warm water, warm soapy water, rinse them out, and then they would be cleaned with the cotton buds so they're nice and shiny. And my colleague Chris now is just lining them with a little bit of edible shimmer powder. So he's going to do some silver, and we're going to do some in gold. There's hundreds and hundreds of different methods of doing this. You can flick tempered chocolate in different colours in there. You can colour cocoa butter and spray them with a spray gun. There's loads of different methods, but this is just one we're going to show you today. Right, so we're up to this stage now. We've got our moulds prepared. That's the main important thing. You've got to get your moulds polished. Whatever you're going to put inside, the inclusions you're going to use, you need to get that ready first. Now I've melted my chocolate down. I took it to about 42 degrees. This is a fancy spatula with a probe attached to it. If you haven't got one of these, you can just use a normal electronic probe and then use a spatula to stir it with. This just kind of does the job in one. And I've took this to about 42, 43 degrees. You don't want to take it any higher than that. because it'll start to denature the chocolate or ruin it. And then I'm going to stir in 1/3 of chocolate drops back into this mixture. This method's called the seeding method. And it's seeding because you're seeding the chocolate back into it. As I'm doing that, I need to stir it in. So whatever amount of chocolate you melt, you're roughly going to add 1/3 of cold chocolate back to it. And you need to keep stirring. And we want to bring this down to approximately between 30 and 32 degrees. It depends on how many chocolates you've got to do. If you've got more chocolates, you're better off going ever so slightly higher in temperature because it will cool down as you're using it. You can use these tempering baths as well. There's different methods, there's loads of different equipment you can use, but you can also just do it over a pan of simmering water. Just got to be very careful you do not get any water in the chocolate. There's certain things that really affect chocolate. One of them is smell, so never put chocolates near anything that smells really strong, such as if you put it in your fridge, don't put it near smoked fish or near flowers or anything like that because it absorbs the smell. And water. Water's a big no-no for the chocolate as well. We'll keep stirring this so it comes back down in temperature, and I'm effectively trying to melt them chocolate seeds back down again until I get a smooth mixture again. We use back of my spatula. Now if you don't get every little drop melted down, what you can do is very, very carefully just heat it a few degrees at a time, maybe blast it in your microwave for a few seconds at a time, just to get the last couple that are being a bit awkward and they won't melt down. But what you don't want to do is start raising the temperature of the chocolate too much. Because the idea of the tempering basically means you're manipulating the temperatures of the chocolate. It changes the structure of the crystals inside the chocolate. And what we're attempting to achieve is what's called the beta crystal or the beta crystal. If you can achieve the beta crystal in the chocolate, then you get the nice shine, the nice snap, and it retracts out the moulds. That's why if you're ever making chocolate and you haven't done this right, it won't come out the moulds afterwards because they don't retract. Obviously, if they don't retract, they'll stick to the mould. So what I can do now, because I've got a couple that are being a little bit stubborn, and it's quite cool in here, you can use an hairdryer or an heat gun, like your DIY shop, just really gently, just brush it up the top, or like I said, you can just get a couple of seconds more in the microwave just to get the last couple of chocolate collets melted down. Right, so we've got the chocolate at the desired temperature, it's about the right consistency, so it's got that fluid into it that we need to line the moulds. If it's too hot, what happens is it runs straight out of the moulds and the shell is really, really thin and it won't encase the ganache. If it's too thick, it'll just be like eating a bar of chocolate because you just want a nice thin layer, but not too thin. So I've got a ladle and I'm going to put the moulds now that have been cleaned and everything, and I'm going to fill up these. This is the fun part. Try not to get yourself covered in chocolate. And then I'm going to fill all the moulds with the chocolate. And then we're going to knock out any air bubbles that are in here, because obviously we've been stirring this a lot, so there will be air bubbles in it. We don't want air bubbles because they'll be in your chocolate shell on the outside. Fill the moulds up as much as we can. Don't worry, it's not wasted because this is going to get used for the next one we're going to do as well. And then you can pick your mould up. You can use a scraper or spatula. And all I'm doing now is tapping it over the top of my bowl, trying not to make too much mess. And you can see the air bubbles are actually rising to the top as I'm tapping it. That's what I want to get out as many as I can. And then this bit, be a bit daring, flip it over. Keep tapping it, and we want to remove the excess chocolate now, and that's going to leave us just with that nice shell. Again, if you've got a nice tempering bath that's got a wheel attached to it, that keeps the chocolate warm as it's going around, so you could just do tray after tray after tray, and it stays at the same temperature. If you're just doing it in a bowl like this, you may have to ever so slightly, like I was talking about earlier, just warm the chocolate if it starts to set too much. Because it's quite cold in here, you can see it's already starting to set down the bowl. The reason it's starting to set at room temperature is because the chocolate's been tempered correctly. If it wasn't, it it won't sell. So now I'm just going to scrape that. That's it's nice and clean. Even though you're working with chocolate, you still need to maintain as much professionalism as possible. So you've got your nice lined mould there, yeah? And you tip that over straight onto your paper. Now the reason you do that is that when the chocolate slightly comes down the mould, it creates a lip around the bottom, around this edge here. So when you fill it with your ganache, your back with the rest of the chocolate, your bottom of your chocolate, will seal nice and tight. Right, so these are our moulds. The chocolate is tempered correctly because it's starting to set even at room temperature. They're nice and shiny, there's no holes in there or cracks or anything like that. So now I've got my ganache that I showed you how to make earlier. It's fairly soft, but it is of a solid state. We wrap the bag around my hand to get control of it, and I'm going to fill my moulds. Now what you need to be wary of now is not overfilling them. There's a temptation with everybody, because everybody loves chocolate, is that you want to put as much in as possible. But actually by doing that, you'll end up with an inferior product when it's finished, because the chocolate truffle filling will come through the back of them, and if you're selling them to customers, it's not going to look very appetising. So we want to actually fill them, you can see, just underneath the level, and that's what that lip that we talked about is. It's to help get a nice finish when we put the chocolate on the back. So I'm going to fill all these up, just to underneath the lip. Now if you wanted to go a bit step further, you could put some little roasted hazelnut pieces in there, or even a full hazelnut in the middle, so it's a bit like a Quality Street kind of ones. Like I said, there's hundreds and hundreds of variations, flavours, textures, designs. And that's why it's such a fascinating thing to do, as well as all the science that's involved in this as well. So once all these are filled, if you do get any bits like these that are stuck up, when it sets you can just push them back down again, so it's not coming through your chocolate. And then I'm going to temper a little bit more chocolate for the back of these. And then we'll cap them off with that chocolate. More tempered chocolate here. We've already checked all temperatures for that, that's fine. This ganache is starting to set off now. The chocolate inside has casted off as well, and I'm just making sure there's no little bits that are going to poke through the back of my chocolate. I want it to be nice and smooth. Now you can just put the chocolate on the back, scrape it off and leave it like that. If you want a more professional finish, you use acetate paper, plastic acetate sheets. Like now, remember from overhead projectors and stuff like that. You put your chocolate on, and I'm going to use that to give it a really nice, smooth finish. You can also get coloured cocoa butter or more sugar powder, put that over the back of that, and when you spread it on the back, that will be on the back when you peel it off. And if you really fancy, you can buy these sheets pre-printed with different fancy patterns on the edible cocoa butter. They are quite expensive. So, chocolate, and then just put a little bit at the top. This time I'm not going to cover the entire tray. Just going to put it over the first, the 1/3 of the tray. And because the plastic is going to help to spread the chocolate down the tray and cover them. You do have to work fairly quickly. You want it to start setting. Probably more like nearly a half and a 1/3 actually. But there we go. And chocolate plastic on top. I'm going to seal that to the top of the paper. And holding it, this is where it gets a bit tricky. Hold it, plastic in the tray, and scrape away from me. And you can see the excess chocolate should flood through and cover all of them. Now you need to scrape it quite hard, because if you don't get the excess chocolate off, you end up with your shells that will have bits of chocolate attached to them, and you're going to have to go through them all and break it off individually. So what you want to do is be able to see the white from the plastic tray coming through the plastic sheet. Just going to spin that round to loosen this up a little bit. Obviously, take that excess chocolate off because it's all reusable. So any chocolate that you've used for tempering, you can't re-temper it because it won't work. But what you can do is save it in a tub. You could use it for grating on top of your desserts or cakes. You could use it to make more ganache. Or you could use it in a chocolate sauce or a chocolate mousse. There's loads of different uses, so never throw that away. Because if you're paying over £10 for a kilo of chocolate and you throw 200 grams away every time you make a tray of chocolates, that's a lot of money going in bin. So if you've got your own business, something to be aware of. And then I'm just going to let those set. Ideally, just leave them at room temperature overnight for the chocolate to crystallise, leave it overnight. I can peel that off, and if it's worked, fingers crossed, we should be able to tip the tray upside down, get a quick tap on the table on a nice clean sheet, and they should all come out of the trays on their own. They should fall straight out of the trays onto your tray. And if it's retracted, that means you tempered your chocolate properly. So this tray is done. These are nice and firm now. We have had to speed it up a little bit. That's why it's got a bit of condensation on top. So normally we'd just leave these longer, but just for process of demonstration, we have sped it up a little bit. But you can see it's nice and smooth. It's got a nice shine on there. And then it should, if they've been done right, when I bang it on the bench, it should all come out. Yeah. And you can see you've got that nice shimmer powder on there that we've put on. And if you wanted to really add more detail, you can even pipe a little bit of white chocolate into these little gaps as well. Got a couple of air bubbles on here, but they're not too bad. Yeah, that's it, they'll come out. And then if I cut one in half, you can see you've got a nice thin layer of chocolate, which just carries that ganache that's inside, which is nice and soft.